Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, if you are preparing for the UGC NET English Literature exam, this video is going to be your quick master revision of British literature from Old English to the postmodernism. So, let's cover the historical background, the major works and key authors of each literary period that you should definitely know if you are going to appear for the UGC NET English Literature exam, or you just want to brush up your knowledge of the literary periods, and all in just 10 to 15 minutes. A quick revision for all of you. So let's dive in. So let's start with the Old English period, which spans from 450 AD to 1066 AD. So the historical context behind this Old English period was that after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Anglo-Saxons, they settled in the Britain. And this period is marked by the tribal warfare, oral tradition, and the spread of Christianity. And some literary highlights: that language was mostly Old English, which was very different from our modern English, and literature was mostly oral, heroic, and religious. And if we talk about some key works and authors, then Beowulf is the earliest surviving epic in English, which was about a story about a warrior who slays the monsters. Okay. And some of the other works are The Wanderer, The Seafarer, The Dream of the Rood, which shows about these works are very reflective and Christian influenced poetry. Okay. And the themes that we'll find in Old English period is heroism, exile, faith, and the clash between the pagan and the Christian beliefs. And the devices that is used in this Old English literature is alliteration, caesura, kennings, which was known as the compound metaphor also. After Old English period comes the Middle English period. So the Middle English period started from 1066 AD to 1500 AD. So the historical context behind this Middle English period was that after the war of Norman conquest, so this period began. So it begins with the Norman conquest by William the Conqueror, and the French and Latin influenced the English language heavily. And some of the key genres we're going to find in this Middle English period literature was chivalric romance, allegories, religious and moral plays. And some of the major works are the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, which is a brilliant portrayal of the medieval society. So you must read the Canterbury Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer, and you should definitely read about each tale that is there in the Canterbury Tales, because questions have been asked from this Canterbury Tales in exams. Okay. So the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, it's a brilliant portrayal of the medieval poetry. And beside the Canterbury Tales, there is Piers the Plowman by William Legoland, Sir Gawain and Green Knight, and the morality plays like Everyman. So some of the themes, the themes of these works, that it talks about social satire, like I talked about in the Canterbury Tales. Geoffrey Chaucer has also portrayed social satire, religious devotion, moral choices, and courtly love. So this is all about the Middle English period. Now we have the Renaissance period. Okay, so the Renaissance period spans from 1500 to 1660. So the historical context behind this Renaissance period was that it has the rebirth of the classical learning and humanism from Italy. The printing press revolutionized the knowledge. England emerges as a naval and cultural power under Elizabeth I, and this Renaissance period was divided into 4 ages: Elizabethan age, Jacobean age, Caroline or Puritan age that we can say, and Commonwealth period. So first, if we talk about the Elizabethan age, it spans from 1558 to 1603, and it was considered as the golden age of English drama. So Shakespeare mostly has ruled this period, we can say. So Shakespeare writes Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, King Lear. He has written every type of work, starting from comedies to romantic comedies, tragedies, plays, dramas. He has written everything. So you must read Shakespeare and all his works. Next, there is Christopher Marlowe, who has written Dr. Faustus. So you should definitely read at least all the works that here I am mentioning. You should definitely read. Okay. Then Edmund Spenser's allegorical epic, The Faerie Queene. And after that, we have Jacobean Age, which spans from 1603 to 1625. And this age was morely philosophical and darker drama. So John Donne was the metaphysical poet. Ben Jonson, he wrote Volpone the Fox. So it's a very famous comedy. And Thomas Kidd, who was the master of tragedy, we can say, and he has written the Spanish tragedy. Next, we have the Caroline and the Puritan Age, which spans from 1625 to 1660. So, Civil War and Puritanism has influenced this writing. John Milton was the famous writer of this Puritan Age or Caroline Age that we can say. And John Milton writes Paradise Lost by blending classical forms with Christian themes. And in Caroline Age, we have the Cavalier poets like Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, and others. And these Cavalier poets, they wrote the lyrical poetry which celebrates love, loyalty, and beauty. And in the end, we have the Commonwealth period, which was a period between the end of the English Civil War and the restoration of the Stuart monarchy. And here, Oliver Cromwell has ruled the Parliament and the nation both. Now comes the neoclassical period. So the neoclassical period spans from 1600 to 1785. So the neoclassical period is also subdivided into some ages, including the Restoration Age, the Augustan Age, and the Age of Sensibility. So the Restoration period sees some response to the Puritanical age, especially in the theatre. So first, if we talk about the Restoration period, so the monarchy is restored under Charles II after Cromwell's Puritan rule. So theatres reopened, women act on stage for the first time. This is the overall context of the historical context of the Restoration period, which spans from 1660 to 1700. Okay. So key writers and works, if we talk about, John Dryden was the absolute favorite of this Restoration age, and he has written Avasala Achitophel, Macflecknoe, and some other satirical and love poetry, we can say. Then Aphra, who has written Oronco, the first professional female writer, who also she was considered. Then the William the Congreve, so he has written The Way of the World, which was Restoration comedy of manners. And the themes that we are going to find in the Restoration period was satire, wit, sexual politics, skepticism of morality. So this is the overall context of the Restoration period. Now comes, after the Elizabethan age, the Augustan age, which spans from 1700 to 1745. So these are the writers. So this is the period where the writers who imitated those first Augustans and even drew parallels between themselves and the first set of Augustans. So Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift, Samuel Johnson, some other early novelists like Daniel Defoe, Samuel Richardson, Henry Fielding, they are the early Augustan age writers. So Alexander Pope wrote Rape of the Lock, Essay on Criticism, Essay on Man, Morality Essays, and some others. So you should definitely read Alexander Pope. And then Jonathan Swift, who has written a beautiful travel book, Gulliver Travel, A Modest Proposal. So he has written also some of the best of the works of Augustan age. Next is Samuel Johnson, who was very famous for his English dictionary and the very famous criticism of lives of the poets, and some early novelists like Daniel Defoe, who has written Robinson Crusoe. They are the early novelists because the period of novel writing started from them. Samuel Richardson, who has written Pamela, Henry Fielding, Tom Jones. These are some of the best writers and their works that you should definitely read that falls under the Augustan age. Next is Age of Sensibility, which spans from 1745 to 1785. So this Age of Sensibility is sometimes referred to as the Age of Johnson. Why? Because Samuel Johnson mostly ruled this period. His writing was ruled in this period. His writing peaked in this period. So it was the time of Edmund Burke, Edward Gibbon, James Boswell, and of course our Samuel Johnson. So ideas such as neoclassicism, enlightenment, and a particular thought that is shared by so many individuals together in this age of sensibility is. And if we talk about the novelist to explore, it include Henry Fielding, Samuel Richardson, Tobias Smollett, Lawrence Strain, and the poets like William Cowper and Thomas Percy. So these are some of the writers that ruled the age of sensibility, or the age of Jonson, we can say. And after that comes the Romantic period, which spans from 1798 to 1837. So the beginning of Romantic period, someone says that it spans from 1785, but actually, if we'll see, it spans from 1798 because it was the publication year of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge's books, Lyrical Ballad, which is considered as the true beginning of the Romantic period. So the Romantic period's historical context was that it was a reaction to industrialization, Enlightenment rationality, and political revolution. So emotion, imagination, and nature take the center stage in the Romantic period. And some of the key works and writers, if we'll say, the first will definitely be Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798 by Wordsworth and Coleridge, which launched the era of Romantic period. And after that, John Keats, P.B. Shelley, Lord Byron, William Blake, they focus on individualism, beauty, and rebellion. So you must read these poets of Romantic age. And Mary Shelley, who has written a Gothic novel, Frankenstein, which is a Gothic novel with some romantic sensibilities. And the themes that will come across in the Romantic age literature is nature, innocence, rebellion, sublime, and emotional intensity. After the Romantic period comes the Victorian period, which spans from 1837 to 1901. So this Victorian period is named after the reign of Queen Victoria, who ascended to the throne in 1837 and thus marked the period of Victorian age. And it lasted until she died in 1901. So it was a time of great social, religious, intellectual, and economical issues. And we can see that the pass of Reform Bill has also affected in so many ways. So this period was kind of divided into three periods, but it's not that important. So Victorian period's main historical context will be that it where the British Empire reached its peak, and Industrial Revolution creates class disparities, science versus faith debates. And also you can see this context in the works of the Victorian age literature. Okay, and some early novelists we can see is Charles Dickens, who wrote the political and social novel, and his every work is a must read for every English literature student. So some of the works of Charles Dickens I am saying: Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, Hard Times, A Tale of Two Cities, Christmas Carol, Nicholas Nickleby, Pickwick Papers. So these are some of the works of Charles Dickens that you should definitely read. Next is George Eliot, whose Middlemarch is the most famous one, and Thomas Hardy, who has written works like Taste the Overwild, Jude the Obscure, and the Bronte sisters, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, who has written Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights. You should definitely read the works of Bronte sisters also. Then Oscar Wilde and The Picture of Dorian Gray, The Importance of Being Earnest. These are some of the most famous work of Oscar Wilde. And if you talk about the poets of the Victorian period, then you should definitely read Alfred Tennyson, Robert Browning, Matthew Arnold. So these are the poets that you should definitely read. And the themes that we are going to find in the works of the poets and novelists are morality, class, gender roles, science versus religion, realism. These are some of the themes that we will find in the Victorian period. Now comes the Edwardian period, which spans from 1901 to 1914. So this period is named for King Edward the Seventh and covers the period between Victoria's death and the outbreak of the World War I. So it's a very short period, but this period includes a very famous classic novelists such as Joseph Conrad, Maddox Ford, Rudyard Kipling, H.G. Wells, Henry James, and poets like William Butler Yeats, dramatists like John Galsworthy, George Bernard Shaw, James Barrie. So you should know about these writers in details. And as I said, it is a transitional period between Victorian values and modernism, so you are going to find some hard themes in this period. So social reform, feminism, early signs of disillusionment. So these are some of the context you will find whenever you are going to come across the literature of this period. And you should definitely read H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, Invisible Man, Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, Kim, E.M. Foster's A Passage to India is a must read, because every time questions have been asked from this work of E.M. Foster. And themes, as I said, colonial critique, class consciousness, social hypocrisy. These are the themes that you will find in the Edwardian period. After Edwardian period comes the modern age. So the modern age lasted from 1914 to 1945. So starting from WW1 means World War One and World War Two, the historical context of this modern age is going to be the World War One, because the modern period traditionally applies to the works that is written after the start of the World War One. So existential crisis, collapses of the old values are the main context of this period, and rise of stream of consciousness technique and experimental writing happened after the World War One. So some of the major writers like T.S. Eliot, whose famous work The Wasteland, J. Alfred Prufrock, James Joyce's Ulysses, a portrait of the artist of a young man, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, Mrs. Dalloway, Orlando, D.H. Lawrence, W.B. Yeats, G.B. Shaw. These are some of the famous writers of the modern age. So every writer of the modern age is important, because you'll love to read this work, as well as it's going to help you in your exams also. So, as we saw, after the World War One, the modern age started. So, the themes of alienation, fragmentation, inner psyche, myth, despair, these are some of the key themes of the modern age. And after the modern age, the postmodern period, which spans from 1945 to present. Okay, so it's still continuing. We are still in the age of postmodern period. Okay, so after the World War Two, disillusionment, decolonization, digital age. These are the context of postmodern period, we can say. So some of the major writers like Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, Grimace, other writers like J. Smith, Janet Winterson, Julian Burns. These are some of the famous writers of the postmodern period. And the themes that we are going to find is irony, metafiction, unreliable narrators, fragmentation, identity, post-colonialism. These are some of the themes of the postmodern period, we can say, postmodern literature. So if you want to know about every detail, context and writers of any British literature is, I have made a British literature series where I have talked about each period separately. I have included the historical context, the main writers, the key authors, poets, and about the actual historical context, like what the age consists of. So if you want to get your basics clear about British literature every age, then you can go and watch the British literature series that I have uploaded on the YouTube. And in the end, I would like to mention some key literary movements and terms you should definitely read, and that you are definitely going to come across in this British literature is metaphysical poetry, which was all about the complex imagery like John Donne, George Howard, Andrew Marvell, and pre-Raphaelite brotherhood, which talks about medievalism, beauty, where we have talked about D.V. Rossetti, William Morris, and aestheticism, which was the main motto and main slogan of Oscar Wilde, which was art for art's sake, and imagism, which talks about the precise visual language of Ezra Pound, absurdism, whose main writer was Samuel Beckett, which talks about the meaningless world and existential theme that we are living in. And in the end, post-colonialism, which was all about the identity and power. And Salman Rushdie, V.S. Naipaul, they are the main writers of the post-colonialism. And that's your power packed revision of British literature for the UGC NET. If this helped you, give a thumbs up and comment your favorite literary is, and check the description for a downloadable timeline chart, and subscribe for more UGC NET content. And I'm going to see you all in a next video. Till then, be safe and have a quick revision and enjoy reading literature.